coming up?
And it is a partnership, and it is, to me, it's no different to finding the right partner in life. You know, being able to slowly develop and build and adopt new skills is the best way to learn. There's something about being put through really hard tasks and challenging times that forges mateships and friends and teams like you'll never see it be done again.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Kieran, and with me, again, I'm back in the studio, unlike last episode. With me is a guy who's not in the studio, but he's all the way over there in Queensland, Isaac Adams. Isaac, how are you there, mate?
G'day, good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Thanks for agreeing to come on there, mate. This podcast here, it's where I just sort of sit down with where I sit down with a wide variety of people and from a wide variety of backgrounds and just have interesting conversations, you know, finding ways for us all to just learn, talk, grow, but at the end of the day, just want to have an interesting conversation because I do believe that, you know, we can learn anything from anyone while having any type of conversation.
Yeah, nice.
So, Isaac, so for anyone out there that doesn't really know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I, as you said, I reside just outside of Gatton in Queensland, and I've lived here with my wife for about 4 years now. We purchased a property here and we run a business. I retrain horses off the track and I teach horsemanship and horse riding to people of all different backgrounds. Anyone from I've had, 5-year-old children all the way up to people in their 60s. And I like to share with them my take on horses and what they mean to me and how I think they can help people develop some insights into themselves and offer some opportunities for self-help really and personal development. And, it doesn't necessarily need to be around that word trauma or looking at deficits. It can be in a really positive sort of proactive personal development kind of space. I've worked with people from those sorts of trauma backgrounds or people that suffer with mental health, right up to people that are professional development coaches that are working in that corporate space. And they really were the top of their fields. And yeah, so I've worked with a really broad range of people and that's what I'm doing. And that's sort of a bit about my background.
Did you always like horses? I mean, were you always into horses from a young age, or was it just something recently?
Yeah, so I have always loved horses, but I've never had anything to do with them up until I was about 28. And I don't come from a horse family, which is pretty unusual, I think, for most people. Usually you sort of are born into this sort of world, but it was an interest of mine, but it just wasn't in my family. So I didn't mention before that I served in the army, and from my experiences in the army, I wanted to help myself with that process of assimilating into life as a civilian, and I wasn't seeing it being done very well. I'd seen a lot of guys really struggle with it. And so I was looking for some ways to help myself, and I guess the curiosity had built over my whole life about horses. So I started inquiring about horses and had read some things where people had said that they were really good for mental health and really good for life lessons. And so that sparked my interest a bit, and that was what started it. That's how I got involved with the horses.
You said there that you served in the army and whatnot. Firstly, let me just say thank you for your service there, mate. I have the utmost respect for people who serve our country or served in the armed forces there, mate. So, firstly, thank you for your service. Can you provide just if you wanted to, what made you sort of want to join the army, or when did you join the army?
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm very similar to you. I hold people that have served this country in high regard, and I have a lot of respect for the role that they offer and the capability that provide that keeps us Australian and keeps us safe. So, that was a big motivator for me to join. But, I'm fourth generation Adams to serve in the Defence Force.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think it's 5 generations on my mother's side and 4 on my dad's side. And they were all predominantly Army. So that was a big motivator for me. I've got I got photos of me as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old kid dressing up in my dad's uniforms. It was always something that I felt I would do, and so that made it quite hard for the transition out of the military. I'd recognise that my time was up, and that it was time for me to sort of diversify and become a little bit broader in my experiences in my life. And so walking away from the military was quite hard. But that driver and that motivator really came from what it meant to my family and myself. But that sort of passion and that high regard is where it came from.
You said there the transition between military life and civilian life. I mean, I couldn't imagine that there personally. And you sort of said there that it was very hard. Can you sort of obviously elaborate just a little bit on that there? And do you think now we are doing something, or can more be done for people who have served our country in the military forces to help transition them into civilian life?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first part of that question in regards to the transition out of military life to civilian life, I think it's been, from my experience personally and with other veterans that I've worked with and first responders and things like that. If you've ever been a part of something that feels like it's greater than you, and something that really gets you feeling quite passionate and strong and motivated and empowered and identifying with it, and all those sorts of fibers that make you as a person, whenever you're a part of something like that and then you lose it, or you put it away, or you put it down, however you want to sort of refer to it, it becomes an identity crisis. And this isn't just the military. You have a look at professional athletes and some of the mental health battles that they have when they stop being a part of that professional sport. We see it in NRL players, we see it in rugby players, AFL players, swimmers. It happens everywhere, right? And I think it's really got to do with human nature and a little bit of our psychology in the way that we work and what motivates us. And that re-identifying and that repurposing is such an individual thing, which sort of leads me into the second part of your question in regards to, are we doing enough? I have seen a lot of really great initiatives, and I've seen a lot of funding for people that are transitioning out of the military, but I haven't seen as many people utilize them successful. And that's a pretty tricky thing to talk about, because it is really a case by case. That's a very individual kind of thing. The big aspect that I'm seeing, and I experienced this myself, is that our childhood has such a big impact on what makes us an adult and what makes us the person we are. Every day where we are in our lives, it is a mix of our previous experiences and our physiology. And our previous experiences, a big chunk of that, say 18 to 20 years for some people, is their childhood. And I think that is having a really big impact on the success that people are having with adapting to life as an adult, or adapting to experiences or challenges or whatever's going on for them in their life. And so I think, in my experience, it's pretty hard to pinpoint one organisation such as the Department of Veteran Affairs and to say that this is their responsibility, or to say that the Army isn't doing enough to help people when they separate from the military. Because I feel like it's really important to remember that the Army's role is in a defence capability, same with Navy, Air Force, whatever it is, police, fires. So that their role and those people in those positions, that they are, the whole of Australia is demanding that these people, we require them to fulfill their capability and to do their job. And that isn't a welfare position. That can be a warfighting position. That can be a first responder position. And so those people aren't the people to put this responsibility on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like that they are doing their job, and the other side of the other side of the house where these people, once they get out, that is up to someone else. And I think that is up to the Department of Veteran Affairs and these sorts of organisations that support people when they separate from their roles. But then the complexity of that is the addressing the individual and helping them to be who they can be next. And this is why I like to work with horses off the track, because I see strong parallels between racehorses and the sort of discipline and the drive and the motivations that these horses possess, the sort of traits that these horses have. They don't always work for them when they come off the track and someone tries to make them a pleasure horse. And to me, I see that quite similar from, military first responder to civilian. And again, that's another complexity that, Racing Queensland or Racing New South Wales is trying to work through and trying to develop a bit of a program to help these guys transition out of their careers in the racing industry into being something for a private home. And it can be tricky. It can be really tricky. So.
Yeah, mate. I mean, the way how you just sort of articulate that there, that like I couldn't have sort of said it there any better than myself there, mate. So it was very well articulated, mate. One of the things there to which when you sort of said there when you're working with horses, it actually sort of brought me back to the earlier part of the conversation as to how. You sort of said there that when working with horses, you can also find a little bit more about yourself as well. When sort of working with horses or with people there, whether they're 5 or whether they're 60,
Yep.
In with horses, there they can discover a little bit more about themselves, and they can also obviously as you sort of said there with help them sort of like overcome things there as well. How does sort of, working with horses, because I actually read an article of you in a current affair, and it actually sort of says there that working with horses and helping likes of veterans and first responders with the likes of PTSD and all that there. So how does that sort of help? Well, my first question is, how could working with horses or riding a horse or doing that there help sort of people overcome those sorts of things?
Yeah. It's a funny thing to answer, and if you ask me on any day, I'll probably give you a slightly different answer. But because it can look so different for everyone, it can really depend on the individual and even the horse that I put them with on what they're going to get out of that. But I think it starts from the fact that horses have evolved over the last roughly 50 million years. They started out as something that was about the size of a deer, or maybe it's a bit bigger than a dog, sort of a smaller sort of animal. And they've evolved over the last 50 million years as something that is a prey animal. So predominantly they are hunted by predatory animals. So What that's done is it's made them be incredibly good at reading their environment and reading situations and interpreting things, and being able to tell, is that creature over there, have they had a change in their energy? Is that animal that's walking up to me slowly, is it just walking slowly, or is it sneaking up on me? Is it actually posturing to attack me? Do you know what I mean? And so they have this incredible ability to read people and read everything in their environment, read other animals, horses, all sorts of things. On top of that, they're a herd animal, and so they do rely on companionship to stay safe in the wild.
Yep.
That's where they've sort of come from. And so that connection and friendship and herd mentality also offers some opportunities for people to connect with the horses. And I think that connection is something that we are losing as a society because we are becoming so technologically advanced that we are losing very basic human skills. I know a lot of young people who struggle to maintain a conversation, but I can look at their social media and they portray to be this person, but that's not who they are. And so they have a very strong disconnect, in my opinion, with the type of person that they are and the type of person that they're portraying. And so that happens a lot too in people that have been a part of a really big role, such as the military, or even, like I said before, with athletes. I've seen it in people in corporate space that are, very passionate about their jobs and their careers and things. And if they lose that, then they really start to wonder what's next for me, and they lose their purpose a little bit. So learning to connect with a herd, learning to connect with yourself is a really powerful tool in starting to put steps together in mapping your way out of a struggle or a challenge in your life. Horses don't respond very well to aggression. They respond, depending on the animal, they respond to assertiveness.
Okay.
But again, assertiveness and aggressions can sometimes seem like a fine line. Assertiveness to me is the ability to establish a boundary. Aggression, I would describe that as overstepping the boundary and moving into someone else's boundary.
That's fair.
And yeah, that's sort of how I would describe it. And for me, I have seen a lot of people, their aggression actually comes from sadness. And the sadness can be from not being heard, not being able to understand, not being able to, feel like they're influencing things in their life. And then generally they'll either become very sad or they become quite aggressive. And horses don't really understand either of those things. They prefer a calm, assertive leader, and horses do prefer someone else to be the leader. In their herd environment, they will have a mare that will be their lead mare. Stallions come and go from the herd. There'll be a bachelor herd floating around somewhere. There'll be an alpha sort of stallion that's with that herd of mares. Yep. But he is transient. If someone else comes and beats him or pushes him out, then there's a new stallion. But the mare, the lead mare in that herd, she is the one that gives direction and everybody follows, and she's the leader. And she has a lot of responsibility. So horses are naturally submissive animals. They would prefer to have a leader and listen. If you have a horse that's trying to fight you, then a lot of things have gone wrong and a lot of things have been missed. He or she has probably tried to tell you stuff a long time ago and you've missed all of it.
Yep.
And so now they feel like they can only fight you, but predominantly they will submit or they'll run away. So that gives people an opportunity to develop a very genuine bond with an animal that just wants to feel comfortable and safe. And if you can learn to make an animal feel safe, that horse feels safe and comfortable, then you can learn to do it for yourself.
Yep.
And when I talked about at the start about connection, I see people that are really struggling with disconnection from themselves and the world and their reality. And horses need you to be 100% present with them in the moment. And that in itself can be really tricky for people because how often do we walk around thinking about other things while we're doing something else?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's being able to stay focused and be disciplined in being present. And that's pretty tricky. I can't say that I've got that mastered. It's something that I work on every day. I've got 3 kids and a wife, and I'm trying to run a business and I'm doing all these other things, and being able to decompartmentalize and put things down and focus on something else, be present with your kid or be present with your wife, or put all that down and go and be present with a horse. It's a skill, that's for sure, but it's not always easy.
Yep.
And that is a big one I see for people. The last thing I'll say is that I feel like working with horses is it offers a little bit of indirect therapy. So what I mean by that is, when you do talk therapy with a psych or a
Yep.
counselor, and you're sitting on the couch and you're talking opposite this person, and you're sort of expressing how you're feeling, and you're talking through things, it can be really just about you.
Mm.
And that can feel quite direct and a little bit confronting.
Yeah, of
When
course.
what I find with a lot of people is that they are very motivated to connect with a horse because it feels good. They're this big, beautiful, majestic looking animal. They can be incredibly soft and gentle. And so that is a motivator. People want to feel that, And so when I start coaching them about the way that they're showing up or the way that they're presenting to that animal, and they start to apply those little cues or start to listen to some of the things I'm coaching them on, and then they see that relationship improve, that is a really powerful thing where people go, that isn't what I was trying to say, but I can see that now that I've changed this and I've changed my body language and I've changed my energy and I've, softened a little bit, or maybe I had to be a little bit more assertive, whatever it may be for that individual, the relationship starts to improve with that horse. And so I'm discussing the horse and I'm discussing that moment between the two of them.
Yep.
I'm not directly speaking to the person,
Yep.
but it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So it has this
of
indirect,
course, of course.
it has an indirect sort of approach to it, but it gives people tools to start applying, and then they start to realize their part in those interactions, and that's the big thing that I've seen, how it has influence on people in a positive way.
It's almost like the way how you just sort of said there, because like you said, their relationship. It's almost like a partnership as well, as to how, like, as you sort of said there, that when you're with the horse, they need someone that's in the moment, and almost like taking all your worries and taking everything there away. So it's almost kind of like a partnership where the horse needs you as much as also you need them, because obviously. They need you to obviously guide them and ride them and all that there, but also you need them to make sure that to make sure that they're calm and that they're all there, because if they're not, then they could obviously go a little bit rampant, and they can obviously kick you off them. So it's almost a bit like so it's almost like a bit like a creating I suppose creating like a new relationship to help just stay in that moment, because like as you just said there, and to be honest, I absolutely completely agree with you in the fact that staying in the moment, living life to the fullest, and just staying in the moment is something that's very, very hard. And what you even also said there about social media, as to how like people can't sort of really strike up a bit of a conversation, but when you talk to them online, they sort of can. It really does sort of showcase a lot as to how technology's changed, but I can definitely see there with the way as how you explained it there, that it's almost like as a way of creating or getting past like your worries and all that there. It's almost like you're creating like a new relationship, which is you and the horse being as one and staying in the moment.
Yep. Yeah. Look, I love working with as many horses as I can.
Yep.
Because every time I meet a new horse, I learn something about myself. And I feel silly when people refer to me as a horse trainer, or I might, people say, "What do you do for work?" And I say, "I train horses." I'm really not training horses. I'm trying to be a better communicator, and I'm trying to have more empathy, and I'm trying to bring along a horse with me on a journey. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not coming from a place of authoritarian. I'm trying to be his best mate, and I'm trying to make him my best mate. Do you know what I mean? And the way that you do that is going to be slightly different and slightly tailored for each horse. But I have a big off the track horse at the moment. When I say big, he's basically an elephant. He's huge, and his name's Doug. And I love when I first meet horses. I love being in a round pen with them and watching them and understanding their way of communicating with me. So Doug, and a big one for that is I want to know when they're starting to feel uncomfortable.
Yep.
Because, if you and I were working together and I was trying to impart something on you and I was trying to develop a relationship with you and you were uncomfortable and I didn't listen,
Yep.
then the more that time goes on, the more you're going to become uncomfortable. And then you're probably going to be caught up on the fact that you feel really uncomfortable. And depending on the type of person you are, you might want to run away from me. You might shut down on me. You might get aggressive with me and say, leave me alone. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, of course. I think that's normally, I think
yeah,
that's human nature, of course. I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
100%. And horses do a similar thing. So I have identified with Doug that when I ask him if he can do certain things for me because I'm going through a process of getting him educated to accept someone sitting on his back,
Yep.
he does this thing with his lip, with his bottom lip, and he what would you call it? Like, sort of smacks them together. Like
Oh yeah.
sort of, yeah. He does this, like he not like a chomping, but like he just sort of softly smacks his lips together, and he might clench them, and then he'll sort of do that again with his mouth, and he sort of does this little chomping, soft chomping in his mouth, and you can see in his face and his eye that that's him saying, hey, I don't really know what you're asking of me. I'm a little bit uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've found is that the sooner you can identify how that animal is communicating with you, and the sooner you can let them know that I am hearing you and we're going to work together on this, they come around so fast. Like,
Oh, wow.
you would, yeah, it's incredible, man. And it's the sort of stuff that makes the hairs on my back of my neck stand up. Like, you got this, like, this horse would be close to 800 kilos.
Wow.
And he is the softest animal. He can be so gentle, but yet he has the power that he could kill you, right?
Yeah.
But we're not looking to make that kind of relationship. We're looking to create a partnership, as you identified, and that's the thing I love about it. That's, I think that, again, with the way that we live our lives and the way that we do things, and just even the way that people find love,
Yep.
is so far gone now from what it looked like even 20 years ago, that I think we've lost a little bit of that intimacy with ourselves and with the world, and you know what I mean? Like, there's just
exactly.
this lack of connection. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I mean, like, hell, going back nearly 20 years, I mean, the way as to how you would sort of find someone is you'd either, just go out, or you would be introduced to someone, through your friends, or through your friends of your friends, and all that there, or go on stuff, like speed dating or whatever. But now now it's like there's like apps and all that there sort of stuff there to find like single people and all that sort of stuff there. So like, definitely like, technology has sort of changed, I believe, the way as to how it's to the way as to how we sort of go about with our intimacy, to say to say the least. One of the things there to which I got to ask is obviously, how would you sort of go about, say, if someone who, let's just say, was their first time riding, but they also have a little bit of like troubles or something like that? Do you sort of pick the most experienced horse, or do you just sort of let them go around go around the horses, and let the horse pick? Like, what's the way of what's the process of trying to sort of have the horse pick the or the person pick their partner? Because as we sort of spoke about before, it is a partnership, and it is a bit of a relationship as well.
Yeah. I think something that I developed from my experiences in the army, and it's funny, I was talking to my mate that I grew up with, and we've known each other since we were about 12, and we were talking about something along these lines, and he turned around to me and he said, mate, we would go into a social situation, or go out, and you would see things and you'd notice stuff and identify things about people and animals and the environment that most people would miss. But you seem to be able to identify things and pick up on people's personalities really quickly. And he said, I think that's just you. I think you've always been like that. I don't know if it is actually from the military. I think that you've always sort of lent that way. That's always just been an ability that you've had. And I suppose he's right in what he's observed, right? But I think that's something that I'm doing with the horses. And so what I do is I work with my school horses, the ones that I usually put with people. I like to work with them at least 2 times a week, maybe 3.
Yep.
And so that they have more consistency from me, and then they'll work with one person on the weekend or during the week or whatever it is. But I'd like to be the majority of their time of interactions with people to maintain a bit of a baseline in what they're doing.
Yep.
And so I'd like to think that I understand my horses quite well. And then I use that sort of ability of looking at people and working out a little bit about who they are. And I'll match them up that way. And it is a partnership. And it is, to me, it's no different to finding the right partner in life. You know, if you're an overly sensitive, emotional person, then being with another person who's overly sensitive and emotional might not be very good. You might want someone who's a little bit quieter. You know, if you go to a social event, you're both very outspoken people, you're almost going to be talking over the top of each other, right? One person needs to probably be the one that can sit back a little bit, and then the other one is the one that can speak up, or whatever it may be. You know, maybe you're not the person that's going to go and return an item because you're not comfortable with speaking to someone and saying that's not what I was after. So you need a partner who's going to do that for you. You know what I mean? To make it a little bit jovial. That's sort of how I see it. And so with the horses, I do the same thing. And I have all sorts of different personalities in my horses, and I really appreciate them for that. I typically like mares, female horses. And it's interesting because a lot of people will tell me they don't like mares. I'll hear that a lot. And I like mares because they are sensitive, and they are thinkers, and they just bring a whole different vibe. They can be quite maternal. I find them quite maternal sometimes. Yep. And look, people seem to have dramas with them because of the sensitivity. They can, you know, in the wrong hands, they can become quite reactive. But I like their responsiveness. And they seem to read people really well. And so sometimes if there's someone that I want to help them identify something, I will put them with a mare, because the mare will she's not just going to make it easy for you. Yeah. She's going to want to see that you can actually ask that question properly, is a way I'd explain it. Whereas I've got some, you know, geldings, the castrated males, that are very compliant, very willing. And even if you don't really get it right, they'll probably still give it to you. And that can be good for people too, because if you've got someone that's sort of a bit timid and needs a bit of a confidence boost, then I can pop them with a horse that's going to give them those easy wins and make them feel good about the experience. And so to answer your question, it's something that I'm sort of making a call on. Obviously, if I see the interaction not go well, then I'll swap horses out.
Yep.
But typically, I get to know the person a little bit, and then I go, okay, I'm going to put you with this horse. If I have never met the person before, I have 2 horses that will pretty much work with anyone and do anything that they ask.
Oh, that's cool.
So those, like my son is 3 in January, and I can put him on one of these horses and he can talk to it and it'll ride around and do what he says.
Oh, wow.
Off cues, word cues. So pretty lucky that I've got horses that are so willing, you know what I mean? And that really like to look after people, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that. There's like, it's a very big skill to have, to be able to sort of look at to be able to sort of do what you just sort of said there, and be able to sort of look at people and just sort of pick out the cues and just sort of know what's what. Because I definitely do agree in the fact there that if you have two people there that are very, very loud, then they're both going to be it's going to be a shouting contest. Whereas if you have a person that is very, very like the life of the party, you kind of need someone to sort of either peg them back a little bit and be able to to be able to sort of peg them back a little bit, or at least to keep them in the room, or at least to tone them down. But also on the flip side of it as well is that if the person is also very, very quiet, it's actually a pretty good idea to have someone be the life of the party, so then they can actually show them the outside world and show them things like that there, and like, to be honest, I mean, I actually didn't know as to how this sort of conversation was actually going to go, because, and it really is interesting, but the way as to how we've been talking, it's almost like the horses, or the way as to how the horses relationship is almost identical in regards to the way as to how we as people sort of have like our relationships, and that's something there as to which, like, so far, like I'm actually starting to actually sort of get like from this conversation, and it's really actually interesting so far. And I mean, I'm definitely and definitely. And that's something there to what I'm definitely sort of starting to sort of figure out is that, like the horses, it is almost like a partnership, and it is almost like a relationship, and it's almost kind of a bit like a sort of like a marriage, so to speak, and whatnot, where you got to support them, and they've also got to support you.
Yeah, look, it is a relationship and it is a partnership. I think if people don't see, people that own horses, if they don't see that is a partnership and that is a relationship, then I think they've missed it. You need your horse to trust you, and you need to trust your horse. And excuse me, there's a really amazing level of connection and intimacy that you can have, intimacy in a more of a sort of deep conversation context that you can have with a horse. There's, you can watch a horse and a rider going around, and if the rider's doing a good job and the horse is working with the rider, there's all sorts of things that are going on there that you can't see.
Yep.
And feelings and connections. A little bit, my coach down in Sydney, he describes a little bit like an avatar. In Avatar, where the guy gets into that setup, and then he sort of connects in with his animal, with his avatar.
Yep.
And then he has no idea how to control it, and it just goes crazy. And then he's got to calm himself down and better connect with that avatar, and then they can work together as one. And look, that's probably the best way I can describe what horses mean to me. And, horses, they've proven that horses can feel your pulse rate change through a saddle.
Oh, wow.
So they are incredibly sensitive animals, and they can feel what's happening for you up on their back. The other thing is that they've shown that horses and humans, when they're standing near each other, they will start to sync in their heartbeats.
Wow.
So you can also almost have a bit of a co-regulation happening between man and horse, right? And there's evidence that goes back 5,000 years. There's a tablet that was found in, I think it was over in Rome or something like that. It was a stone tablet, and on the top of it, it referred to horsemanship. And so man has been recording horsemanship for at least 5,000 years. And, once upon a time, a guy has walked out, looked at a horse and gone, I could be better with that. I could do more with that. I can move faster. I can be better in battle. I can lift more. I can pull more. I can be better. And exactly. I think the sad thing that's happened for horses is the Industrial Revolution, and when we started to develop cars and motorbikes, because then we didn't need to rely on horses.
Yeah.
Horses they've now become a bit of a nicety. They're a luxury, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But only 100 years ago, maybe a little bit over 100 years ago, we were relying on them with our lives.
Mm.
And I think it's really special that horses and dogs have been a big part of humans for thousands of years.
Yeah, I mean, you said, I mean, like you put the nail on the head there. I mean, with the relationship between a man and a horse, and I also the ways how you sort of also said earlier there with kind of take like an NRL player, an AFL player, rugby player, or even someone there who served in the military, being in that bubble of being like being like a first responder, or being in the service, or as a footy player, AFL player, being in that bubble, and then when they've then walked away, or when they've retired. And then trying to transition there, it's almost like it's almost like sort of the ways how you're also describing it there, because the horses have already had sort of like that herd mentality themselves. They can also sort of relate, but they'll also, as you said there, make them work for it as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's got lots of practical applications to life, which is I think it gets overlooked. A lot of people that have probably grown up with horses become quite conditioned to the sort of relationship that maybe their fathers or their mothers or their coach has with a horse.
Yep.
And I think because I've come to horses looking for my own personal development and looking to learn from them, I have a really unique sort of way of looking at horses and the way that I interact with them. And I'd like to see more people sort of stop and think about their interactions with horses, but it goes beyond that. It also goes into life. But that was really the basis of how they've helped me with my challenges, and then how I like to help other people as well.
Yeah, I mean, the way is how you just sort of said there. I mean, helping you with your challenges, and then as to how you'd like to help other people with their challenges. To anyone, I mean, firstly, what would you say to someone if they were sort of going through like something, or even just or even just someone there who just wants to sort of learn how to sort of learn how to ride a horse? What would be one of the first things there that you would actually sort of say to them before they even jump on a horse?
The big thing that I want to see, obviously, lots of people love the idea of riding a horse.
Yep.
And, lots of people have probably gone to trail riding places and hopped on a horse and ridden around and things like that. But for my horses and any horse that I've got something to do with, I like people to first develop a relationship. I want to know that they know how to read the horse. They know how to understand when the horse is communicating with them, and that they know how to appropriately communicate back. And then once they develop a bit of that rapport and that bit of connection with that horse, then I would look at popping them in the saddle. But there's a lot of things that you can do on the ground. When I'm retraining a horse or educating a horse, even like a baby that's going to start to be ridden, I start and I follow a process that was taught to me by my coach, and it's a process that's been around for hundreds of years. But the riding is actually the last part.
Okay.
There's a lot that goes on from the ground, where you're on the ground working with that horse, and there's lots of activities that you can do that are directly related or progressive towards being ridden. And it basically gets to a point where the only dynamic that changes is that you sit on their back. But the rein aids, the forward aids, the way that the horse learns to carry weight and the way that it learns to go forward, all of that happens on the ground. And so that when we get on the horse's back, the only new dynamic is that we sit on its back. And from a psychological perspective, if we'd apply it back to humans, it would be a little bit like when you learn to drive.
Yep.
And when I was a driving instructor in the Army, and whenever I had someone who'd never driven before, I would take them to a car park or a big open area, and I would put it in a low gear, and I'd just get them to work on clutch control.
Okay.
So just understanding clutch in, clutch out, brake, stop, clutch in. And we would go through that process, right? And then after that, I'd start to utilize, okay, this is how I want you now to incorporate the steering wheel, and we're going to drive around these witches' hats or whatever it is. Still carry on from friction, finding friction point, clutch control, and braking. And now we're going to add steering. And then once we start to get that ball rolling and we're putting together clutch control, braking, and steering, then I start to incorporate gears. So let's start going up and down gears. And then once we start to get comfortable with that and the person's able to coordinate all of those different processes and those different steps into driving, then I go, okay, now let's go through those gears and then work through coming down the gears, and then let's go back down to a stop, and then let's take off again. And let's consolidate all those little lessons that you've learned with the clutch, brake, steering, gears, and then start to get people thinking about using their mirrors. And then let's go out on the road and go for a drive.
Yep.
Right? By following a really systematic approach, we avoid flooding.
Yep.
And if you've ever been in a situation where you feel like you're flooded and you're completely overwhelmed, it's not a place where you learn very well.
Yeah.
You usually try to survive is what you do. And when we talk about nervous systems, you're probably in your sympathetic nervous system because you start to get into a panic and your heart rate might come up and you start to get a little bit stressed. Not a great place for learning. But if we can maintain ourselves in a calm state and we can stay in that parasympathetic nervous system, then we know that we can better digest information and retain information. And the best way, I believe, to do that is to keep things into digestible. I spoke about earlier decompartmentalizing things. Being able to slowly develop and build and adopt new skills is the best way to learn. And I had a lot of that through my childhood, learning from my father, and I saw a lot of that in the military. And that is a really important step that I think is overlooked, again, from the way that we teach kids, the way that we learn ourselves. We've got to be better at breaking things down and making them very progressive.
Yep.
And that would be my advice to anyone that wants to learn or interact with horses.
Okay.
Is to keep it simple.
Yep.
And have a bit of a systematic approach, and that's pretty hard when you don't know what you don't know. So you need to find yourself a coach. But this is just in my humble opinion. But if you go to a riding school and the first thing they do is put you on that horse, I would get off and leave, because that you're not going to develop a relationship with that horse sitting on its back for the first time. You need to get to know that horse on the ground, and it's a big ask for a horse to carry a person around when it knows that you are a predator. Our eyes are on the front of our heads.
Yep.
His eyes are on the sides of his head, right? Of his head. So you think about any prey animal, they have eyes on the sides of their heads so that they can see around them and they can pick up, nearly a 360 sort of view.
Yep.
Predators have them on the front of their eyes so they can target. And they can judge distance and they can identify things. So that horse is under no illusion. It knows exactly who you are. And I think it is a much nicer sort of interaction if you can develop that relationship first before you start riding.
It reminds me of I can't remember of a movie and whatnot where he wanted to ride a horse and the horse just didn't want to ride with him, but as soon as he looked him in the eye, as soon as he looked him in the eye and all that there, he was like the horse was like, yep, I understand. I'm gonna listen in and I'm yours and whatnot. Something there that just sort of just came to my thought, and I was actually going to ask this a little bit earlier, but it's something there as to what you sort of said there with the social media and with the do you think that we've sort of, as a society, as we've sort of developed, become obviously obviously we're not as structured as what the military was because of what because you've served, but have we become a lot more looser in times now. I mean, obviously, like there was a little bit of structure, but now there's almost like not like there's not really much structure. I mean, like as you sort of said there, like someone who can't hold a conversation in person, but then when they send a text message or a message through like Instagram or on their Facebook or on their X account and whatnot, they are like a completely different person. Are we sort of like losing like our bit of like our personal structure a little bit that sort of made us a little bit from what we were?
Oh, look, we'd only be discussing the world according to me, and I don't, I don't know if that's everybody's cup of tea. But look, I had a student that was working with me, and
Yep.
and we were talking about public speaking. I was referring to it as an analogy, and they said to me, "Oh no, I don't do public speaking at school." And I
Oh
said,
wow.
"Oh, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, if I don't feel comfortable with giving my speech to my class, I can just record myself and give it to my teacher."
Oh wow.
And I said, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "Oh, well, if it causes me too much anxiety, then I don't have to do it." And that challenged me because, I there's a lot of people out there outside of Australia that are tough people.
Yep.
And they are hard people, and they are doing it really hard, but they're continuing and they're pushing on, and they're very resilient, tough people, right? And I don't believe, it's just my opinion, but I don't believe that doing that is good for people. I don't believe that letting people, so you're a little bit uncomfortable with that. You're saying that you've got perceived stress and anxiety from this. That's okay. You don't have to do it. The amount is a different story. The amount of stress that we put people under, or the amount of challenge that we give people, that needs to be tailored, and that's a bit of a prescription kind of thing. But I do feel like being uncomfortable can be a good thing, and I challenge myself to be uncomfortable all the time. And that's it. Everything that I've done that I'm proud of, I was extremely uncomfortable with before I got there. And so, I do think that, to answer your question, I do think we're getting away from some of the ways that were good for people, and pretty worldly kind of discussion. But I think that we've done things sort of poorly in the past as well, though. If you think back to, an interesting thing that happens is my son, he doesn't like swimming. And so I'll take him down to swimming, and we get in the pool, and he just starts crying. And I talk to him through the whole thing, and I just say, "Hey, mate, like, we're having a swimming lesson. It's really important that you learn how to swim. You can do this. You can do this. I know you're uncomfortable. You can do this." Now, the duration that child stays in that space is important to me, because I want him to challenge himself, and I want him to overcome it. I want him to walk away like he achieved something, but I don't want to push him for so long that he just resents it.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Of course.
And
I get it.
I think what we've done is, I remember as a kid, it was like, cry and I'll give you something to cry about.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's like toughen up, princess. That sort of, those sort of sentences
or take a concrete
thrown
pill.
around.
Or take a concrete pill. I remember that in high school. That was one of the things there that they said there in high school, which was take a concrete pill.
And see, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that either. But then I don't agree with giving people the easy option of saying, well, if that's too hard, that's okay. You don't have to do it. I'm not about participation awards, but I'm also not about suck it up, princess.
Yeah, of course.
You got to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it's got to be like a middle ground of it, because it reminds me of this time there when I was having an assignment in year 10. I was a little bit nervous, and I actually remember that my English teacher, she actually sort of said to me, "Look, you can." After class, you can actually present it to me, but because I had a couple of friends in my class there as well, they can stay back and they can actually present it to you, because there were a couple of other kids in that class there that I just didn't want to present in front of. And she said,
Yeah.
or you can just present it to the front of the class. Either way, you are going to be presenting it, either to myself either to myself and to your friends, or to myself, your friends, and the rest of the class. And I was like, well, I'll take I didn't want to present it in front of some other people, so I took the second option. But
Yeah.
you are right in the sort of sense there where everything that we do there, some of the best moments that even I can remember for when I was uncomfortable. But I think also
Yeah.
you've got to also realize as well, that you've also got to realize that as well. But also being uncomfortable can also be in so to speak terms uncomfortable, and sometimes people just don't really like it, and it really does sort of have that sort of effect. Do you think that because just quickly as I just sort of thought of it there, that as we are heading into that sort of unstructured sort of world and whatnot, that it is going to be a little bit more harder for take a former athlete or a military person as yourself, or a first responder, for when they do step away, it is a little bit more trickier to transition to sort of out of that bubble, because we're now more unstructured a little bit, or and everything's a little bit more wilder in today's society. Does it make it a little bit more trickier?
I hear what you're saying. It's I think it places a lot of importance on coaching and mentoring.
Yep.
And something that I say to people is that when you go into these, even if we were to focus on football, or I know a guy, he was my coach for a while, a boxing coach. He was 3-time world champion, middleweight. And after his, he had a big fight, he lost the fight. And when he came back to Australia, he was sort of left to his own devices.
Yep.
And there wasn't anyone really there. From what I've gathered from the stories, talking to him and stuff, he isolated himself, and he was quite depressed after the big loss, obviously, and a lot of questions around his career and things like that. And he lost sight of things for a while, and he didn't have a strong coach or mentor there to sort of help him walk through that experience.
Yep.
And I think that too much rigidity is a bad thing, but no structure is also a bad thing. And when you're an athlete, or when you're in the military, or whatever it is, you're playing footy or whatever, and you have a coach there that's coaching you through the process of what you have to do to continue in that role or in that position that you're in.
Yep.
But when they step away from that, they're quite often left with no coach, no mentor.
Yeah, of course.
And so that's what I enjoy about being a part of this program, where we work with these guys and girls that are separating or have separated from their roles, is because we're offering them an opportunity to be coached and mentored and provide some example to them on what they can do now. And it's coming from someone with learnt experience and lived experience. I've walked that path. My coach and the other guys that I work with, we've all walked that path, and we understand what they're going through.
Yep.
And if you were to think about, if you were to roll up to a boxing gym and you said, "Hi, I'm Kieran, I want to learn how to box," a guy is going to stand there and go, "All right, mate, let's start teaching you how to jab. Let's teach you how to stand. Let's teach you." And they walk you through a process of how to be a boxer. And I think that people need the someone that walks them through the process of being them again.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost like in order to you got to crawl first before you can walk. Then in order to go even one step further, you got to be able to walk first before you can run. You can't just go from crawling straight up to running and all that. You got to take it all step by step and whatnot. So I mean, I completely agree with that. Just one last question before I wrap this up in regards to the final parts of it there. Obviously, how do I say it like this here? What was, obviously like serving in the army? Last question. What was it like? Because we hear a lot of people talk about it, or from a commentator's point of view and all that sort of stuff there, but and talking about it even just like worldwide and whatnot. But like obviously, like I have so much respect for the people there that serve our country and go into the military and all that there. What's it like, sort of like a little bit? Can you just sort of even just like a brief, like 1 minute sort of
Yeah.
thing there? Doesn't even have to be like the glory or anything there. Just
Yeah.
a little bit about it.
Well, look, I can only speak on when I was in the army, and that was 10 years ago now. So it's very structured.
Yep.
You turn up to work at the same time. You do your physical training, then you cut for morning tea, and then you come back and you do different tasks through the day. You do non-technical inspections of kit. You might go and do some shooting. You might service vehicles. You might do some lessons, touching up on soldering skills, things like that. Then you have lunch, and you do the same thing in the afternoon. You're usually knocked off by 3:30, 4 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
And that's a typical day. That's what it looked like for me. The times that you're really doing the soldering and things like that is when you go outfield.
Yep.
Or you do pre-deployment training. And that's when you would typically do your job, whatever your job may be in the Defence Force. That is what you will do in the field, and you're essentially training and practicing for what it might be if you were to be at war or defending Australia or overseas, right? So deployment life for me was 12. They were 12 hours on, 12 hours off, but sometimes it was more like 14 to 16 hours on, and then by the time you do handover and things like that,
Yep.
and so quite a high-paced sort of role, but incredibly rewarding to do what you've trained for in real time on a real operation in an actual war. That was a very very good experience for me. It came with its challenges, but I'm very proud to have done it. And I had it a lot easier than a lot of other people. There were guys that I was you'd see in the mess hall, and they were doing it really tough. I really take my hat off to some of those guys. Big thing to remember is that everybody in the Defence Force has a different job.
Yep.
And depending on those roles, it's going to depend on your experience. And so, I'm not saying that some people are tougher than others, but I know there's a lot of blokes out there a lot tougher than me because they did it a lot harder than I did. You know what I mean? And so,
of course.
I appreciate people thanking me and stuff like that. But man, there's some guys out there that have lost limbs and lost their best mate, and they are the guys that really deserve that pat on the back. But getting back to your question, that is really the day-to-day life of the military. It's quite structured. Everything's by timings, and it's. I think part of the issue that makes it hard for people too is it could quite possibly be the best thing you've ever done in your life.
Yep.
And a lot of guys, if they hear that and they're serving, they'll probably laugh and be like, "Oh, it's a joke, rah rah." But when you leave and you look back at it, you realize just how good it can be. There's a lot of times where it's really bad, but you'll probably never make the mates that you do in the Army or the Defence Force like you will on the outside. There's something about being put through really hard tasks and challenging times that forges mateships and friends and teams like you'll never see it be done again. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah, of course.
Some of the mates I made in the Army are still my mates today, and they are the sort of mates that you can call on and they'll do anything for you.
Wow.
And I've been mates with them for, nearly 20 years. So,
wow.
So it's pretty incredible. You can meet some of the best people in the Defence Force. You can meet some of the worst too. But I recommend it. I don't overly know what defense is like now,
Yep.
but just based off what you can learn about yourself and what you can learn about the world and what you can the experiences you can have. I still love what I did. I still love the Defence Force. I don't have any hard feelings towards it. And I would really recommend it to anyone that wants to try it.
Yeah, wow. I mean, wow. Like the way as how you just sort of described it there. I mean, like, like honestly, I honestly just you just left me speechless there, mate. I mean, yeah. I mean, to be honest, there, mate, you just left me speechless. I mean, because I mean, I could only say from what I've heard, and you know, and yeah, you are right. In the sense there that for me on the outside, I probably wouldn't even know. So, but to hear for you saying there that like with the brotherhood and all that there like that there like it really does sort of form bonds to which I think, to be honest, I think that's sort of what the thing there of the main thing there of what we were talking about for this entire episode. I mean, like the way how I'm sort of looking at it now in this episode is the forging of bonds, whether it's, you know, in the military or whether it's with the horses or and whatnot. So again, I'll say it also again at the end as well. But again, mate, Isaac, thanks again for your service there, mate. And yeah, you know, you've done so much for the country, to which even, you know, like people there who haven't signed up, so and whatnot, and you went off and you signed up, and yeah, thanks a lot for serving our country, mate. You have my respect, and to all the men and women there that did serve our country, you know, you have my respect and the greatest respect, I think, for most Australians.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
So, mate, so we are headed now towards the towards the end part of it, where I'm going to be asking you a question from my previous guest, Jay Ellis, in for episode 6. Jay's question, I'm just trying to get it here. The question is, what activity would you do that makes you lose track of time? What are you passionate about? And if you had to teach that, how would you go about
it? Well, it's what we've been talking about for the last hour.
I thought it was. I was going to ask it at the start, but then I thought, oh, maybe it might be something else, and it might go away from that there. So I thought, oh. But I kept forgetting to bring it up. But I thought it might have been that. But I'll let you answer.
Well, I do have the other things that I'm quite passionate about is any combative sport. I love combative sport. Unfortunately, I was diagnosed with arthritis. I think 2 years ago now, or a year ago, and it's in my hips and my back and my neck and my knees and stuff. So I don't move like I would like to, and I get punched in the head more than I'd probably like to. But I love boxing, and I love go-kart racing, any motor racing. So I race go-karts, and rather than just waffling on about horses again, I'll talk about go-karting. So I learned to drive when I was 3. My dad, my dad actually was a driving instructor. After he got out of the army, he started a driving school business, and so he had the pedals on the passenger side. And there's a photo of me standing on the driver's seat, and I'm steering the steering wheel, and he's doing the clutch and the gears on the other side. And yeah, when I say to people I drove a car when I was 3, they don't believe me, but I legitimately did. I only steered it, but so then when I was 8, I wanted a horse, and Dad said, "Mate, I don't know anything about horses." And I said, "All right, can I get a dirt bike?" And he's like, "No way, dirt bikes are dangerous." He said, "I'll get you a car." So I actually got my first car. It was a Datsun Stanza, a Datsun Bluebird TRX, and we got it for $100. And Dad taught me how to fix the brakes. We redid the brakes on it, put new calipers on it, put a new master cylinder and a slave cylinder in it, and did a full service on it. Like Dad taught me all this sort of stuff in the shed. It was about 8 years old, and then we had about an acre and a half, and I used to drive around this acre block. And then when I was 12, I sold my car and I got a go-kart. And so I started racing go-karts, which, funnily enough, I bought back a year ago. I found my original go-kart from when I was 12.
Oh, wow.
And it still had the stickers on it that I put on it when I was a 12-year-old. That blows my mind. So I'm 35 now. And so I bought that go-kart back, and that was actually what got me back into racing go-karts.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I raced go-karts for a year, and then Dad found a race car. That was another Datsun. I was a mad Datsun fan when I was a kid. A Datsun 240K, which is extremely rare, and it rare now. But, yeah, so then I raced for about 4 years in autocross, which is a combination of time attack and rally. And so I have a real love and passion for motor racing, and I could do it all day, every day. I love tinkering and getting things going. I probably enjoy smelling fuel more than I should.
It is a nice smell. It is a nice smell, but I probably shouldn't say that.
Wait till you smell racing fuel. That really gets me going. But so my little fella Cooper, as I was talking about him before, he's 3 in January, and I bought him a go-kart, slightly different, but it's a petrol one. And I didn't expect him to. I mean, I realised it does 50 kilometres an hour, and it's meant for 6 and up, right? 6 and up. He was 2.5. I busted out, and I pushed it out in the backyard. And he had an electric car, but he'd drive it around and around really well. He's never hit anything. He's never, ever hit anything, never crashed it. He can steer like Schumacher. And anyway, the battery would go dead. So I thought, I'll fix this. I'll get you something with a petrol engine. And so I bought this 2-stroke bloody go-kart thing, and I put him in it, and he looks down at the throttle, and I said, that's the same as yours, mate. You press that one, but there's a brake on this side. He didn't take in anything about the brake. He just hit that throttle. He takes off across the property, went on about 10 or 12 acres here, and I'm running. And I'm trying to catch this go-kart. Little did I realise at the time it can do 50 kilometres an hour, so I'm not catching that. And anyway, I'm yelling and yelling. I'm like, stop, Cooper, stop. Thankfully, he heard me. He takes his foot off the accelerator, and he turns around, and he stops and looks at me. He's got this big smile on his face. I'm blowing a lung trying to catch him. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. What are you doing? Like, you've got a 2.5-year-old driving this go-kart. He's hammering across his property. So anyway, I put it away for a little while. And then about, maybe 6 weeks later, he showed more interest in it again. And so I played around with it so it couldn't go so fast. And I put him back in it. And, mate, he drives this thing for hours. And it's incredible. His natural ability for judging distance and space. Like, if this kid isn't Schumacher in 20 years' time, I'll eat my hat, because he is an incredible driver.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, that's something that that's my other thing to get away from the horses. Not that I feel like I need to, but it's just a complete polar opposite to working with horses, working with a motor and mechanics and yeah, that's my outlet. That's my thing where I get my adrenaline rush and and can definitely lose track of time. Yeah.
And then you'll be teaching, and then obviously you'll be teaching your son, and who knows what'll be. But that was my question there from my previous guest, Jay Ellis. Said, what are you passionate about? How would you go? What are you passionate about? What do you like? What are you passionate about? And how would you go about teaching it and all that there? So thanks for answering that question there, Isaac. And to be honest, it was actually a really good story there. To be honest, I mean, look, what sort of kid wouldn't want to go 50 kilometers an hour at 3.5 and whatnot? I mean, like that there just sounds absolutely cool and all that there. So now I'm going to let you say the question there that you're going to say to my next guest. And so what would the question be? I mean, obviously
Yeah.
you've sent it to me, but I'll let you
Yep.
sort of say it. On
Yeah.
here.
So my question is, how do you stay disciplined, and how do you how do you stay disciplined, and how do you stay focused on that discipline? And the reason why I ask that is because motivation is fickle.
Yep.
Our motivation, it peaks and troughs, and some days
Yep.
we don't feel like it, and some days we really feel like it. And the days that we really feel like doing something, it's all pretty easy. But for me, discipline is how you push through the ebbs and flows of motivation, and it looks different for everyone, I believe. But I say to a lot of my students, because I see a lot of that sort of drop off of discipline or motivation, and then they'll stop turning up, or they stop applying themselves, they stop trying. And I like to say to people, I believe that discipline is self-respect, because being disciplined is respecting yourself enough that you will continue to work at something because you deserve it. And rather than just giving up on yourself and going, oh, it's all too hard. Having that self-respect to say, no, I'm going to be disciplined on this, and I'm going to push through this, and I'm going to keep working for what it is that I want. And I'm curious to know how your next guest does that.
That's a very good way to sort of put it. That's actually a very good way to actually think about it, Isaac. I mean, like the self discipline is self-respect, and I mean that's a very, very good way to sort of think about. And I'll be sure to ask my next guest. I mean, you even got me sort of thinking about it just right now. I mean, like I'm literally just like staring literally I'm literally staring at the microphone, literally trying to sort of think in regards to how would I go about answering this question, because it's a really good question to sort of ask. And to be honest, I'm actually kind of glad I don't have to answer it. I'm actually glad. But so anyway, there, mate. But yeah, mate. Thanks again for that question. And that there. Concludes the episode. And again, Isaac, thanks again for agreeing to come on. Thanks again for having a very good conversation. It was a very great conversation. We've got to have you back onto there again sometime there, mate.
Awesome.
And whatnot there, mate. Again, thanks again for your service, and for all the men and women that have served in the armed forces or even as first responders. Thank you again, and Isaac again, thank you again for your service. And yeah, that there is all there, folks. And I'll see you all in the next episode.
Thanks, mate.